Uh, Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Debbie Miles Williams, and I'm an archaeological illustrator based in Leicester, Leicestershire, in East Midlands. So, how did I get into reconstruction illustration? I went to art college in Cardiff, Cardiff College of Art Design, and graduated in graphic design illustration. So, I was 5 years in that industry, working for various design studios and advertising agency, before I got a job in the School of Archaeology and Ancient History at the University of Leicester as a technician, but it was to specialise in producing archaeological illustrations to support academic research and also to produce all their black and white photography. So it was during one of these projects with one of the academic staff that I was invited to join their project in Italy, central Italy. So my very first reconstruction was of a old farmhouse, medieval farmhouse on Roscino Plateau, just to show people how the farmhouse looked in that period. Commissions to produce the work. Normally, well, when I was at the university for 28 years, obviously all my commissions were as part of my job. So I would do those for various different academic stuff, multi-period. So it'd be anything from prehistory right up to, say, 100 years ago. Since leaving the university in 2019, my commissions have mostly come from Leicestershire County Council, who I work for part-time at a heritage site. My most recent one is the Hallerton Roman Helmet, which I'm working on at the moment. This has been ongoing for about 2 years now. I drew all the cheat pieces, which have now been published. I'm currently working on reconstructing the iconography with Helen Sharp, who's a curator at the County Council, and Teresa, who is a PhD history student. So between the three of us and looking at all the research online, we are gradually rebuilding the iconography of the helmet to try and show what it looked like in its original condition. Reconstructions delivered to the wider audience, yes, through books. I've got illustrations in over 30 publications now, mostly by academics. Some of the work has gone into magazines like Current Archaeology. Some of it has gone into museums as permanent displays. There's one in Charnwood Museum here in Leicestershire. There's another one up in a museum in Scotland. A lot of the reconstructions I also do for those clients will end up in presentations that they give at places like the Society of Antiquaries in London. And some of the illustrations have actually ended up on television. I'm very proud of one that I did for Alchester Roman Fort, which ended up on Time Team's Channel 4 many, many years ago. So when we're looking at putting a reconstruction together, it's very much a collaboration between you and the academics or the archaeologists and the historians. In fact, anybody's been involved with the project. So, for example, if you are producing something of a landscape reconstruction, then if there's been archaeobotany taking place, environmental, you would then talk to the environmental archaeologist to find out what sort of seeds and trees and plants were growing in that area to make sure that you get the correct botanical evidence put into the illustration. Building, similarly, you would talk to architects, historical architects from their backgrounds. Regards to people, you would actually talk to osteoarchaeologists to give you all the information about that person that you're trying to reconstruct, and if they had any health issues that you may need to put into the final illustration. Sometimes I do go to visit a landscape. So for the Borough Iron Age Hill Fort in Leicestershire, did a trip up there, took my camera, took a sketchbook, and just got a feel for the place and being out in the environment and what would it have been like to have been a person living in the Iron Age in such an exposed area. Beautiful, but I should imagine in the winter it must have been really, really cold there. That gives you a feel for the place and sparks your imagination when you go back to start work on the drawing board. I usually start the artwork in pencil. I like to work on tracing paper because it gives you a really nice textured surface, especially when you're doing lots and lots of shading, trying to show that depth. Currently, I'm having to do quite a bit of that work on paper to show the depth for the Haliton Roman helmet because we've already commissioned a helmet maker in Rome who's also already started the process. And then we have a silversmith in Birmingham who's going to do all the silver covering. And what he needs more than anything is very detailed drawings with those sort of shadows to show the depth so he knows exactly how much silver he needs to put in the right places to show up the iconography properly. I usually start the artwork in pencil. I like to work on tracing paper because it gives you a really nice textured surface, especially when you're doing lots and lots of shading, trying to show that depth. Currently, I'm having to do quite a bit of that work on paper to show the depth for the Haliton Roman helmet because we've already commissioned a helmet maker in Rome who's also already started the process. And then we have a silversmith in Birmingham who's going to do all the silver covering. And what he needs more than anything is very detailed drawings with those sort of shadows to show the depth so he knows exactly how much silver he needs to put in the right places to show up the unfortunately, you don't get a lot of colour work in doing archaeological reconstruction because of the cost is quite prohibited. So it is quite exciting when you do get a few pieces. The Dendera Temple in Egypt, that was a colour piece for an academic publication, which was all about the destruction of archaeological sites. I used watercolour for that. I tend to use a lot of watercolour. What's the other one? The reconstruction for Dr. Sophia Adams at the British Museum. Sophia was quite keen to not have a lot of colour in the final reconstruction. The only colour that she wanted was to actually go onto the cloak, covering the lady that was buried, with detail focused using pencil to get all that information out. So yeah, it's normally pencil or watercolor to bring that bit of color. What I would do is perhaps if I've got a nice detailed pencil drawing, is get it scanned in and printed onto watercolor paper. Or then dip the paper in water as you're supposed to do, stretch it on a board, and then stick it down with brown tape. And then when that's dried, then the illustration is already there for you. So all you're doing then is working on coats of color, which is quite a quick process. So the majority of the work will be in the actual preparation of the drawing and making sure you get all the correct facts and details in as much as you can, because archaeological reconstruction is never 100% a representation of what happened in the past. You're basing it on what evidence you actually have, plus sometimes a little bit of artistic license. So I've often said in the past that an artist can capture areas that a photograph cannot. There's been many projects I've worked on in here and abroad where quite often the photographer on site will pick up an artifact and say, oh, I know there's something on there, but I can't quite pick it up. I can't get the light source right. Could you draw it first and see what you can find? So a good example was out in Kenkriai. There's a Roman cemetery project in the Peloponnese where there was a big incense burner that was given to me. It had three quite distinct columns, with the one in the middle being the tallest. Now, on the front of this, you could see lots and lots of decoration, but on the back, the photographer couldn't quite pick out what was on the centre of the back. So I drew it and actually found there was another wreath of laurel leaves with bunches of grapes and things like that. Once I'd seen it, and then everybody else started to see it as well, which was a bit strange. But it's now on display in the museum at Izmir, and they've kindly put another mirror behind the back of the incense burner, so you can see the design on the back that everybody was missing. And I suppose as illustrators, we're so used to using our eyes in quite a different way to everybody else. And I take photographs. I do a lot of photography and take photographs of shadows and reflections, and see shapes and forms that people say, "Oh, I wouldn't have thought of taking a photograph of that." Or textured surface. Again, somebody might go and take the whole photograph of a garage door with peeling paint on, but if you look carefully at that garage door, you've got numerous bits of artwork across the whole door. If you just be very careful about which area you select, and then play around with the app to change the filters on it. So I think because I use my eyes every day in doing quite detailed things, you do tend to pick up on shapes and forms that other people might miss. And again, the Haliton Roman helmet, I'm sorry I keep mentioning this because this is the big project I'm working on at the moment. that's a really good example of where we discovered something a couple of weeks ago. It was incredibly exciting, where myself and a PhD student were looking at the back, and we'd been looking underneath the museum lighting, which was a very yellow light. And I kept saying, I can't see things because it was just blanking everything out. So I turned my mobile phone on, where you've got the little torchlight on there, which is more of a blue-white light. And as soon as we turned it on, I said, oh my God, there's something else on the back. And the other said, oh no, you're wrong, you're wrong. I said, no, come and have a look. So Tim Savage, who's the manager down there, quickly went and got hold of a light that was a bigger light that's used for filming. Same thing, like a blue light in it. And then suddenly we could see on the back that there was something like a web shape, 3 distinct web shapes, and also a tail, which hadn't been noticed before, and a paw that was up like this. And we went, oh, we think we've just discovered more animals on the back of the helmet. So we've now got the 2 lions that are on the front of the helmet that have been reconstructed. And on the back now, we have 2 griffins, and it's really exciting, holding some sort of big amphora in the middle. So that's what I'm working on today, is reconstructing that information. So again, there's a brilliant example where the illustrator, hey-ho, we've spotted the information that everybody else the last 10 years have missed. So my advice, all those archaeologists out there, please employ us illustrators because we can help you. Yeah, this answer is about the person who commissioned you tries to edit the artwork. You'd have a lot of meetings at the beginning to discuss what they would like, and hopefully, if it's quite clear, you can get it down on paper. So you work out how many hours, produce your quote for the artwork. But yes, I have had 1 or 2 problems in the past where people really don't know what they want. They've seen something elsewhere, think, oh, I'd like my work to look like that. But then you have to explain to them, well, that was done in that illustrator style, and my style is different. So that's one issue you have to make perfectly clear at the beginning of a commission when you have the first meeting. And sometimes they've asked for things that you just know as an illustrator and a former graphic designer, and knowing the print process, that it's not going to work. Either from the colours they're asking for or the amount of information they want in there. Most people are pretty good when you do explain that to them, and especially if you can show examples of what's good and bad artwork and what would work in print. But sometimes you do get 1 or 2 customers that no, they know more than you. So you have to sort of bite your lip and say, okay, I'll do this work, but just be aware if you're going to make amendments, then you put a clause in to make sure that the extra hours are accounted for and you get paid for them. Otherwise, you can get in a situation where you ended up doing lots and lots of alterations to make this client happy, and then finding out you're out of pocket because you haven't actually quoted for those hours. So it's really, really important that right from the beginning, when you work with a client, that everything's clear and transparent, everybody knows what they're doing. And then hopefully, between the collaboration between the 2 of you, you'll come out with a much better end product for publication. I love all creativity. I know there's some artists that they find one thing that works for them and they just stick with that their whole lives. I think creativity is all about exploring, is all about taking that risk, is all about trying something new, because suddenly you'll find out, oh, I actually think I've got a bit of skill in this one, and I didn't think I would have that. I've tried ceramics in the past, and that's something I'd like to do a lot more of. I've been teaching workshops where we've been working in clay, doing impressions. Again, that's another area I'd like to expand. Instead of just doing small plaques, work on a much bigger scale. I like working in charcoal because I like the depth that you get with charcoal when you use it. I've got an idea this weekend after seeing an exhibition of bringing, because I'm trying to bring art and heritage together in my practice, is I think of using the Roman helmet with all the different features that we put on that, the lions, the iconography, the woman on the front of the helmet, the griffins at the back, the helmet itself. I thought it'd be quite exciting to have a big sort of canvas material, and first of all put some brightly coloured contemporary, to make it more contemporary, acrylic mark making. When that's dried, then use charcoal to draw up some of these different features up onto it and make a big wall hanging. So that's something I'd like to have a go at over this next year, once I've got this particular project finished. And I did mention it to Helen Sharp earlier, and she said, "Oh, that sounds good. We could put that up in the Harbour Museum." So I am trying to, having done archaeological illustration for 30 plus years now, which is much more technical illustration, it's part of scientific illustration, like the medical illustrators and the botanical illustrators. This, I'm now trying to move away a little bit from that. I mean, I still take the commissions on, but it'd be nice to use that background to actually become more arty, as it were, and use some of these images. And instead of people looking at archaeological illustration as being some old fogey type illustration that's stuck in books, is to actually bring it more onto canvas and try and get it more out there. Because there's an awful lot of talent out there that do archaeological illustration, or heritage illustration, if you want to call it that. But it'd be nice to see it done in a more artistic way, and not that tight sort of technical scientific illustration. Because we have so many wonderful artifacts that could be used and made and produced in a more contemporary way. I've just mentioned Hallerton, how we're trying to take that stage further and doing something more artistic. The Cossington child burial, I've just heard today that there's going to be another exhibition and a project with the wider participation team with Leicestershire County Council. At the moment, it's don't quote me on this, but the title at the moment is My Jewellery, My Story. Now, one of the finds from the Cossington burials was found with a woman, and it was a necklace. And it had, I think, I'm just reading off some notes here. It's one faience, one jet, one shale, and then the rest of the beads are all amber. So I did a small reconstruction with this woman doing this, you know, with threading the beads, many years ago, with burials happening in the background, all the ritual that goes with it. But I'd like to go back to that. I'd like to see if I can do something more with that, the actual woman, and perhaps tie in with this new project that's coming out. Hallerton I just mentioned. Borough H. Hillfort, I would really like to go back to that. Now, the only evidence I was given when I did that reconstruction, it was prior to the archaeology unit, ULAS, going to dig there, was 5 photographs, and most of those were taken in the winter. So there wasn't a lot of evidence. So it's a very simple reconstruction I produced for that, which is on a board up at the site. Then the archaeologists came in and excavated for 5 years and found all this amazing material, plus evidence of buildings outside the fort. I think it'd be really good to be able to do another reconstruction showing, well, this is what happened when you get archaeologists involved, and bring that to life and put it up on the board next to the original ones, just to show the difference, how much information you can get, but put it in a visual form for the public to see. So those are local projects that I'd like to revisit and perhaps take them another step further.